Good afternoon. We are super excited to talk about culinary nutrition today as we have an apple pie in the studio, and Cynthia and Mary and Erika have unbelievable cheese that they're going to taste today and talk about the sensory experience as part of our discussion with culinary nutrition. Good afternoon. My name is Nicola Willier-Fenton. I'm a content marketing manager in UVM's Continuing and Distance Education Department, and we are very happy to have not one course that we're talking about today, but two courses, our culinary nutrition and our artisan cheese and sensory experience. And we have a guest with us as well. Erika is here from Cabot Creamery, and we have a really delicious opportunity for our students in our culinary nutrition course that Erika is going to share with us in just a few minutes. I want to welcome all of our viewers on YouTube. Please put questions in the chat box. We will have our team member Kelly bring the questions over and share them with our presenters today. We'll try to answer questions throughout the presentation and allow for some time at the end as well. And it wouldn't be a UVM continuing and distance education webinar without some real takeaways and some tactical things that you can do. We have a video showing how to create a pie crust from scratch. And we call it demystifying the pie crust because for me, it's intimidating. So thanks to Cynthia for making it not as intimidating. So we'll do that today as well. So we'll go over introductions, a little bit more, meet our panelists, combining wellness and cooking into culinary nutrition. What is culinary nutrition and how does that play out into our course? An exciting opportunity from Cabot Creamery that Erika will share with us. And Mary and Cynthia, and maybe Erika will taste along with us too, will actually walk you through a sensory experience of cheese. And what is that and why is that important to how you think about culinary nutrition? And we'll talk about our online course offerings, culinary nutrition, artisan cheese and sensory certificate programs, and a teaser that our ever so popular John Dewey Kitchen is coming back this next summer as well. So Cynthia Belliveau is our Dean of our Continuing and Distance Education Department, and she also is the co-chair of the John Dewey Kitchen Institute and a research faculty in the Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences and also in the Robert Larter College of Medicine. We're super happy to have Cynthia teaching this course again. And Mary joins us as well. Mary is joining us from, I suspect you're in Waitsfield or the Mad River Valley. She is also managing the Mad River Taste Play. She teaches our artisan cheese and sensory certificate program, and she has a background in corporate and catering and professional chef, and she also did quite a time at Whole Foods as a specialty team leader. So we're going to hear from Mary and the artisan cheese course as well. And Erika Anderson-Putman joins us from Cabot Creamery. Erika is going to share an opportunity coming up in a few minutes, and she's going to stick with us as Cynthia and Mary taste some of the cheeses in the gift box that students can earn. So I'm going to first toss this over to Cynthia. What is culinary nutrition? I feel like it's a term that people are kind of scratching their heads a little bit. I understand the culinary side. I understand the nutrition side. What is culinary nutrition? Let's start there.
Well, we designed this is a 4-week online course, and we intended it for individuals who want to know something, who already know something about nutrition, but they're less skilled in combining the culinary sort of wellness skills into their repertoire. So I deliberately differentiate in this conversation between nutrition and wellness in that as a country, we're not very successful when it comes to following nutritional guidelines, and we are becoming more and more unhealthy. So separating out this concept of using the culinary skills along with this aspect of wellness, because to get to nutritional adherence or compliance is really what the course is about. Because we're not very successful with just hearing about nutritional advisement. And there are, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and on the slide is examples of how that you do that. So walk us through some of that information.
So, and just quickly, there appears to be a correlation, by the way, between behavior change or compliance when an eater knows what's in their food. So through this skill improvement and a much deeper sensory analysis, which we'll talk about in a minute, there is this sense, you start to see people relax. So in the class, when they're so worried about following nutritional guidelines, we say, okay, let's not think about those. Let's really go through the exercise of cooking, which requires time and reflection or mindfulness. Then there seems to be this awakening that happens for more nutritional awareness. So in the class, we sort of meld wellness and culinary techniques into what we call culinary nutrition. And if you look at the slide, we focus on the central concepts or disciplines of nutrition. So we talk about carbs and proteins and fats and oils, but also the food science of why things happen the way they do. And then we explore through the culinary and sensory skill development in the end product of a meal. So in other words, we try to seamlessly weave these themes together without you really knowing it, and you end up with this delicious meal at the end. So as I've said, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what are the opportunities to share too? I think that when you're talking about ending up with this delicious meal, we're at a spot where we're not sharing meals as much anymore. So how important is that sharing aspect that goes on in the community of the class too?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Nicole, because the way that we choose to eat, it's complex, and food is very, very personal. So what we're trying to do in the class is to get you to recognize how you taste, what your preferences are, because you can't really advise someone else. You can't really work with children. You can't do any of those things until you really understand how you taste. And through the exercise of sensory analysis with your peers, we have this, it's really a fantastic experience where you have people really exploring the way they taste, and then talking about the smell, clearly the aroma, the way it even sounds, and then also what it reminds you of. So there's all these food memories, and as people are moving through that process together, there is this camaraderie that happens in class and a sharing of that experience.
Thank you for sharing that experience with our potential learners as well. Let's just keep going on this trend for just a minute. So what does that look like? Many times students say, well, I haven't taken an online course before, or I haven't been back in a classroom in quite some time. And maybe that's shifted over the last 9 months or so, as so many things have gone remote and online. But walk us through, what are the things that people will be doing each week?
So in the first week, there's a lot to do in each of these weeks. But what we find is that students are able to move relatively seamlessly through it. The first week is really focusing on the concepts of food. So we get a deeper dive into what a carb is, what a protein is, fats and oils. We think about aspects of food from that perspective and how to cook them. We work with Jean Harvey, who is a nutritional expert on campus, and she helps explain this in a not a deep dive, but an overview. And in that time period, we're actually cooking some of those foods. So if we focus on a protein, we're focusing on the culinary aspects of cooking chicken, for instance. And the second week, we start to get deeper in there, and each week we're doing deeper and deeper analysis of the way that we're tasting. In the second week, it's more recipes. It's focused on the different concepts, the basic concepts of food, again, with carbohydrates and fats and oils. We do exploration on cooking oils and what their smoke points are, to really understand what oils you should be cooking with. The gelatinization of starches, and when we go very deeply into that while you're preparing a meal.
And here you have Module 3 and Module 4. So you're not taking it out of the kitchen really, but you're just kind of expanding what you're talking about in these last two.
It's total integration. Everything is integration. I keep using the word seamless, but that really is what we're trying to do. This one is really introducing yourself to the concept of palate solving. So what didn't work about the recipe? Or I'm working with someone, they don't like the fact that they miss salt, for instance. And what am I going to do to palate solve, meaning I'm going to try to help them with the way that they're tasting food, because they're not going to be compliant if they don't like the way the food tastes. And so with palate solving, we may say, Well, acid, squeezing lemon on something instead of sodium will actually give that sense of satiety. They will taste, it will be a flavor enhancer, which is what salt does. We work on different aspects of adaptation and thinking about how, again, focusing on yourself first and eventually getting to cooking for someone. And then in the last one is complete recipe adaptation, and the cook in our class is now working primarily on their own, using all that they've learned in the last 3 weeks. Fabulous.
I've seen in some of the testimonials and comments from people reframing the way that they were thinking about picky eaters. And I think that we so easily put that, especially on children, as a label on them. And it seemed like that there was information as to how to reframe your own perspective and how that they're approaching food. Can you explain that?
To really appreciate the way that you taste. We have divided the palate into 3 categories. So we have as you suggested, the fussy eater, or what we call a super taster. And there's nothing wrong with that. Being able to really taste is an attribute. I have a sister, usually with children, I actually have a sister who's a super taster, and we have condemned her whole life. And through this experience, I've realized that she actually really does taste intensely. So how do you work with food to make that not quite so pronounced for her? And then you have the sort of moderate taster, which is most of us. And then you have the compromised taste. So there is something that is through health issues, or you really can't taste, or have limited ability to taste. And so how do you enhance flavors and make them stronger in order to be able to please those palates? So we work with all of that within those frames. So it's not anything individual, it's just really focusing on those 3 palates and how to prepare food for them.
And I think too about cheeses, and I'm really excited to hear from Erika in just a minute, and Mary as well, because just thinking about all of the different strengths of cheeses and tastes and things, and I watch my little 4-year-old try to navigate that sometimes, and what you have taught me is that I need to kind of think about her experience in a different way based on her palate. So thank you for that. Here's a few quotes. We offered Culinary Nutrition, our online course, for the first time this past July, and so it's coming back in the winter. We kind of call it the spring semester, but it will still be winter around here. And so this is what some folks have said as they had concluded the course. Carolyn said, the science of how to balance flavors and textures and confidently create recipe variations. And I want to hear a little more about that in a bit, Cynthia. And then Bonnie says, building that confidence for those new recipes. And I think that's a lot of what I've learned from talking with you about this course of, demystifying the pie crust. For me, it's having the bravery and the confidence in your own abilities. Learning vocabulary for explaining the sensory experience, as you were mentioning as well. And Kate mentioned too, just opening up a world of possibilities in terms of the future. It could be, that you're a dietitian and you don't necessarily have the culinary skills, and how do you weave in some of this information? In teaching it for the first time this past summer, Cynthia, what were maybe some ahas that you saw from students that you might want to share with us?
Well, I've taught this course in class, in our foods lab many times with students. I mean, not with this perspective, but I've taught the culinary pieces with students in class for years and years and years. What was the most surprising to me was, as a result of COVID, I was forced to move into this online environment thinking that nothing could replace what happened in the foods lab on campus. And I was terribly wrong. What I found is that the security of people's own kitchens and being able to experiment on their own with my guidance was very relaxing and helpful for them. And I think that as a result of that relaxation, there was this boldness that started to happen of more experimentation and moving a deeper into aspects of sensory, thinking about their mise en place, which is a term we use for getting ready, preparing before you start your meal, having a good discipline about the ingredients that you're buying, how you're doing it, and the sort of holistic approach really worked for the students. And then we did a couple of live sessions where we did sensory analysis. I think at that point was in the summer we were doing a tomato, and it was really exciting to watch people tasting those tomatoes together in this moment of togetherness. And I think that it built confidence. As you can see, students felt like they were really building their confidence and being able to work through the course at their own pace.
Great, thank you. I know that I've seen lots of really wonderful comments and testimonials as a result. Erika, I don't want to steal the thunder. There's a little bit of information up here, but I really want to hear from you as to this. I called it a delicious opportunity. It's just an amazing opportunity that Cabot Creamery. Cabot is always so generous and so supportive of the programs at the University of Vermont and food programs around the country. Walk us through what is Cabot offering for culinary nutrition?
Sure. So I'm just going to start off and maybe give a brief 1-minute little bio about Cabot itself. We are a farmer-owned cooperative. There are 800 farm families that own Cabot Creamery throughout New England and New York. It started in Vermont, and you probably know us best by our Seriously Sharp. It's that red buffalo plaid cheese. It's a staple in, I think, almost every household in the state of Vermont, at least in the rest of New England. And we actually have a really long history of partnering with the University of Vermont. UVM Cream, their dairy sciences program, is actually part of our co-op. And so it's been a really big priority for us to support the University of Vermont through Cream as well as their continuing education programs. Now, this particular scholarship we're very excited about. We are offering 8 full tuition scholarships for the culinary nutrition course for the January session, and it's awarded to health professionals. But if you are somebody who is interested and is not necessarily a health professional, we did add a student section on the application, and we definitely encourage you to apply. We are trying to be as inclusive as possible. Definitely also understanding that in this time, lots of us are cooking from home ever increasingly and cooking for other people. And so it's important to be able to learn how to refine your cooking style for the particular palate. It was so interesting for me to hear from Cynthia just now about some of those details of the program, and makes me wish it makes me interested. I might sign up. And the other cool component that we're offering is to try and incentivize people to sign up for this course. We are offering gift boxes to 15 individuals. And this gift box is going to include a $25 gift box of cheese. I'm just going to pull out a couple of the cheeses that are going to be included, which is our Vermont Sharp, which is a very popular cheese. And I know that Mary and Cynthia are going to talk about it a little bit more later, so I'm not going to get too far into that one. But I'm also going to feature our pepper jack cheese, which is a Monterey Jack cheese, which is blended with some peppers, and it's really delicious, and it's great on breakfast sandwiches, and it's a really good blending cheese to add to recipes. And so that's the other reason that we chose that, thinking about culinary nutrition. And beyond that, it also includes a cutting board, an apron, a spoon, a knife, basically everything you could hopefully need for this culinary nutrition course. I tried to build it into this gift box for you guys. So again, we're so excited to be supporting and partnering, and looking forward to learning more and getting some more submissions. We've already had some early applications, which I have been looking through and reviewing, and I'm excited to hopefully get some more and get back to you guys by November 30th. I've already set my meeting to meet with people over it with my my colleagues. So, and we actually have a registered dietitian on staff at Cabot, which is really important to us. We believe that dairy is an essential component of nutrition, and cheese especially just provides so much protein, and it's such a wonderful, healthy snack that nourishes you and keeps you full. So instead of reaching for the chips, you can reach for a 3/4 ounce bar, and I think it gets you a little bit farther. So again, if you have any questions, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you, Erika. Thank you so much. And please share our appreciation back with the entire team. I know there's a huge team at Cabot Creamery that allows these things to happen. And I just want to say thank you also that you turned the Sharp into the small snacking sizes that are the wrapped ones. Those are in my kids' snacks and lunches on a regular basis. So thank you for making that convenient for
Yes,
busy.
of course. They're in my refrigerator too. They're perfect.
They are perfect. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And as Erika was saying, the deadline to apply is coming up in a couple weeks. And so if you do have any questions, please let us know. And there is a lot of information on our website as well about this in particular. So I want to then come back to, and we haven't heard from Mary yet. And so Mary, I want to introduce a little bit more about your course. We're going to dive deeper into the Artisan Cheese and Sensory Experience course in a few minutes. But we're going to go into our sensory experience portion of the webinar now. So maybe if anyone watching, it's a little bit after lunch, but maybe it's time for a snack, or depending if you're on what coast you're on, maybe it's not lunch yet. Grab some cheese, grab something that you might want to try and taste along with Cynthia and Mary. And so, Mary, will you just explain a little bit, what do we mean by sensory experience of food?
Sure. So in our class, when we hit the point where we're ready to do the sensory evaluation, I've actually put together a 4-page worksheet, and it takes the students through texture evaluation, a flavor profile, and we're actually like rating things on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being low, 7 being high, and we're using things like fresh butter, heated milk, garlic onion, fermented hay, all of these sort of nuanced flavors that you can find in your cheese. Of course, we're going to do everything cheese specific, but going into like meat broth, and then we're asking you to rate your mouthfeel and your texture, really just diving in on that piece of cheese that you've just put into your mouth and going through absolutely everything. And we're even asking you to rate your density again on that 1 to 7. Is it like butter? Is it more like a stuffed olive? Is it a little bit more like a cocktail sausage? And really, again, evaluating what's happening in your mouth, all of your senses, besides just what you're tasting, but what you're feeling, what the aromas are that are coming off of it as it kind of melts into your mouth, starts coating your mouth. One of the really awesome things about cheese is that it changes a lot with temperature. So even going from being in the refrigerator, then to being to room temperature, and then melting in your mouth, there's different steps that you're going to hit when you're tasting your cheese, and that's all going to be in the sensory evaluation. And then we even take you through the aftertaste, again, on a 1 to 7, and giving those descriptors. Is it caramel? Is it roasted nuts? Is it that fermented hay? Again, that's one of my favorite flavor profiles. And then we ask for your final thoughts too, kind of telling us that journey that you took, what may have surprised you. A lot of folks in our class found that as their cheese did that warm up, they took it on the journey through their mouth, that surprised how much the flavor changed, and how maybe something like chocolate, which was just a tiny little nuance, came out way more once it warmed up. And then of course we go through the pairing portion of it as well. So once you start adding in other flavors, does your cheese flavor actually take a backseat? Does something that was more mellow come out more now because you've added extra acidity, or you've added a little extra sugar or sweetness into it too, and that's changing the flavor profile. So we ask you to put all of that into your final thoughts, and it's a really fun way to write it all down, look at it, and realize what this journey is that you just took, and that it really did change so much. And I have this horrible habit because I stand behind a cheese counter all day. I'll just pop things in my mouth, won't think about it. But whenever we get a new cheese in and I do that, I do the whole like close my eyes, I breathe it in, I really let it coat my mouth, and there's such a world of things that happen that you just miss from just popping it in your mouth and keeping it moving. So that's what we talk about when we talk about sensory evaluation.
Great, thank you. And I know we're going to go through that in just a moment. Cynthia, I want to come back over to you for a second, though, because I have seen you do the sensory, and I've been a part of it. And when we were filming all the components of the culinary nutrition course, and it makes me think about, I'm not going to get the timing right, but that it takes you, I don't know, 3 or 4, sometimes 5 hours to make Thanksgiving dinner, and then you've completed it in about 20, right? When you finally sit down. And so that's where we are, I think, as consumers and Americans, we don't sit and don't appreciate and take the time. Why is what Mary is describing and what you do in the course so important to our culinary nutrition?
Well, as I said before, it's it's about becoming mindful. So when you have a deeper appreciation for what you're eating, there is this awareness that happens that then, as we have seen, leads to more compliance. And we do the same sort of things that Mary's talking about. We and the students, when I'm teaching this for undergrads, are completely frustrated with it because they just want to get in there and start eating. But we slow it all down. We want to slow this all down. So you're going to really look at the food to the point I give students a magnifying glass to be able to really look at the food and see. If you were to look at the cheese, we'll talk about this, but you would see all the little fractals in there, and you would talk about that. And then you would smell the cheese. And when you're smelling, you want to get as close as you possibly can, because our olfactories are the most powerful. We smell food better than we can taste it. So using your nose is really, really important. But we also talk about listening to the food, the sound that it makes. As Mary said, mouthfeel and texture and all of those things, and sort of the kinesthetic power of food that spiciness does. It sort of excites the taste buds. So just forcing that kind of attention is really when you start to see the doors open for the way that individuals start to think about the food. The final one that I want to talk about is food memory, because we all have food memories, good and bad. And so eliciting that food memory, we have students write down, if they can't really describe it because there's a lot of difficulty in using words that Mary just said, goaty or barnyardy or whatever we might say about cheese. But then if you're starting to eat a whole meal, there's all these other vocabulary words that are good to start to think about. The food memory tends to be the easiest to get to quickly. So this reminds me of sitting in my grandmother's house with the wood fire going and eating this soup or whatever. So you can position yourself into those places more easily.
Thank you for sharing that, Cynthia. I just want to ask Erika, it makes me think about how Cabot Creamery approaches this, and how, I'm putting you a little bit on the spot without warning you I was going to ask you this question, but just thinking about when there's new flavor profiles and new cheeses that the Cabot Creamery might develop. Do you as a collective co-op stop and pause and really think about the taste and the texture and the nuances of the cheese to end up with a better product?
Definitely. We actually have 3 cheese graters on staff that are, once the cheese gets made at one of our plant facilities, it goes to age, and throughout the aging process, there are people tasting the cheese and doing exactly what Mary and Cynthia were talking about. They're touching it, they're bending it, making sure that it is the right consistency, they're putting it in their mouths, they're smelling it, making sure that everything is all right and up to snuff. And then, beyond that, when we are developing a new product, we actually get to, they're kind of fiddling with the recipe, and so we actually get to taste it ourselves. And so that is definitely one of the biggest perks of working for Cabot for me, has been when we get to try out those new flavors and see how they go together. And on my end, I do some wine and cheese and beer and cheese pairings for some of our partners, and it's always just so fun to come up with those unique combinations. Like Mary was saying, balancing out, if you have a more acidic wine, balancing it out with a cheese that is more buttery in flavor that will mellow it out a little bit. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to peek behind the curtain a little bit at Cabot and see how you do it. So thank you for sharing that information. I'm going to pass back over to Mary, because Mary, do you want to walk us through what I know you and Cynthia have chosen a cheese to taste, and I'm going to encourage any of our viewers, if you have any cheese or anything you want to taste along, you can do the exercise with Mary and Cynthia. But Mary, I'm going to have you walk us through what you want the sensory experience to be like here with us.
So we are using the Vermont Sharp Cheddar from Cabot, obviously. And one of the things that I want to point out on here, if you can see it, that Cabot does a brilliant job with, is they'll tell you that their cheese is naturally lactose-free. And this, going with the culinary nutrition thing, is extremely important, because a lot of folks think that they can't eat cheese because they're lactose intolerant. Once you start aging cheeses, the lactose actually naturally ages out, and you can enjoy these harder, longer aged cheeses. So look for that on the label. Like, again, Cabot puts it right on the front of their label, easy to see, and I think that's super important. So don't be afraid to enjoy cheese if you think that you're lactose intolerant. And the other thing that I want to point out, and why we're highlighting the Vermont Sharp, is it just won first place at the National Milk Producers Federation's annual cheese contest. And awards and contests are something that we talk about in my class, and along with the American Cheese Society being a big part of it, and where you can go in the cheese industry and how important it is to make really great cheese, and you can win these awards. And exactly like Erika was saying, there's teams of people that are creating these cheeses and making sure it's the best that it can be so that they can win these awards. So that's why we chose this one today, so we can all taste an award winner. And so what I do when I first start with a cheese is I check out the rind. So you always want to start from the outside and work your way in. On the Vermont Sharp, it is a cryovac block cheddar, so there actually isn't going to be a rind on this one, but you want to check it to make sure that there isn't any sort of visible molds, or if there isn't anything texture-wise that really shouldn't be there. And you always want to check for fun things like eyes and crystals, and that kind of gives you an idea of how long your cheese has been aged and kind of what you can sort of start to expect for the texture. So you inspect that, kind of see where you're going from there. If it is a rinded cheese, I always give it a really good smell too, because you can get some amazing aromas off of a cheese rind, to the point where, you can tell if it was a wet summer because it's going to smell like rain and mud and grass and things of that nature, or if it's, more of like a drier rind, you can kind of smell that cellar aging, and it's that musty smell, and it's a little bit of hay, and it's a little bit of grain and things of that nature. So always give it a really good whiff for all that kind of fun stuff. And then the next thing you'll want to do is take your little cube and pop it in your mouth. And as you bite into it, you want to check for that that sort of density test. Like, is it really firm? Does it give a little bit? Is it pliable? That's a really great word. How does it react just right against your teeth like that? And then how is it sort of melting in your mouth? And what are the front flavors that come off of it? Like, for me, immediately off of this, I get fresh milk, a little bit of like a creme fraiche kind of acidicness to it, but then it mellows right back out into almost like a buttery kind of flavor. And this one, the Vermont Sharp is sort of on the younger side of the Cabot cheeses, because they do go all the way up to the 5-year, which is one of my personal, oh God, I'm so excited to eat my 5-year cheddar. So it's going to really more coat the inside of your mouth, not a lot of crystallization in it. And then some of like the nuttiness is starting to come out as it sort of melts in my mouth, then it's coating the inside of my mouth. I can taste that, the nuttiness, almost like caramelly flavors that I love in cheddar. And then there is that little bit of bright acidity right on the end of it too, that I always associate, especially with like New England or Vermont cheddars. And for anyone out there that wants to do something super fun, get yourself a Vermont cheddar, an English cheddar, and like a West Coast cheddar, and one style of cheese that's made the exact same way, because cheddaring's a style or a make style, completely different flavor profiles depending on where it's made in the world. So that's really fun. And then I think about the chef part of me then starts thinking about how would I use this, what would I cook with it, what would I pair it with, and that's the next direction that I would go with this.
Thank you so much. You're making me very upset that I missed lunch today. Cynthia, walk us through what you're doing. I know you're following along with Mary as well, but what are some other ways that you would describe? And because I think learners were trying to grasp with how we describe some of these things as you're doing a sensory experience too.
Well, I mean, she's a pro. That was amazing to listen to. I go a little bit slower, and so we're writing the entire time about appearance. We are then the whole idea that Mary was talking about of breathing. You taste the best when you breathe out of your nose. So if you put that cheese in and allow the warmth of your mouth to start to get the volatiles going, breathing out of your nose is a fabulous way to taste it. And all of the buttery caramel things that Mary was saying, I could do that exactly as she was saying it. I think that that also for me, I mean, I'm also a chef, so it's interesting for me to think immediately about what I want to do with it. And I think that that's something that is really fun for participants as they, maybe by halfway through the course, they're starting to really think about ingredients in different ways. Cheese is also it gets paired very well with something acidic. So thinking about how you do that makes a big difference. So Mary was talking about, a red wine with cheese because it does, I mean, when she was saying at the end it has like a lemony aftertaste, I was thinking that's exactly right. It has like this acid finish. It's almost like tart on your tongue. And I was thinking, okay, so what would I pair with that in order to make the cheese just sort of be central to the experience? So those things were going on in my mind. And then finally with the comparison of different cheeses, that's always good to do, is just to think about the differences in things. And then how the cheese would, what does it remind you of? What is the food memory that I have here? To maybe solidify some of the vocabulary that you came up with, those descriptors.
So many things we can do with just one bite of cheese that probably many thought about. So thank you, Mary, and thank you, Cynthia, and thank you, Erika, for sending those delicious cheeses. We're going to move on here for a minute because I want to be mindful of time. We've got about 20 minutes left, and I want to make sure we get to the pie crust. And I want Mary to just, I'll turn your mic back on here in a minute, Mary, but the Artisan Cheese and Sensory Certificate Program is going to kick back in the new year as well. And so we've taught this for the first time this past fall. And so this is, Mary's touched on a few of the different things, but this is really geared towards people that are interested, home cheesemakers, people that are interested in maybe getting into the field, working a cheese counter, just being better at pairings, just an understanding. Maybe this is tying into culinary nutrition. It's something that you might be doing in your work. Mary, will you just walk us through a little bit about what are the things that students will learn in the different modules in your course?
Sure. So we start right at the very beginning. We talk about the four main ingredients in cheese, which is milk, salt, rennet, and cultures. We take a deep dive into what is that? What is rennet? What are cultures? What do they do? Why do we need them? And then we talk about all of your animals, well, we focus on the cow, sheep, and goat because you can make camel cheese. We didn't go there, but you can. And we talk about, the differences in those milks as far as fat contents and protein contents and why that's important, how it changes the structure of your cheese, and of course how it changes the flavor, because cow milk versus sheep versus goat, completely different flavor profiles. So that's going to be your first module, is really learning why these ingredients are important, how it changes seasonally, and that kind of thing. And then we take the next step and we take our ingredients and we actually make cheese. Well, and we get to watch the Von Trapp farmstead make cheese. I was very lucky to spend a day filming a double cream brie that they do, and we did it on a make day there, so we get to cut the curd, we show the draining of the whey, we show the molding of it, and then we talk about rind development in all of your different kinds of rinds, whether it's bloomy rinds, your washed rinds, your natural aged rinds, and cave aging. We have a beautiful video that goes to Crown Finish Caves in Brooklyn, which works very closely with Springbrook Farms and Grafton from here in Vermont, taking their cheeses, aging them, and talking about how the caves work with, humidity and temperature. And then we have showings of how they pull pieces from the core out and do exactly what we're going to do in Module 4 of it, and walks you through the whole sensory evaluation, how they determine when a cheese is ready for market, when they send it to market, knowing that it's going to sit in a warehouse for however long, and then it comes to my shop and it's going to sit there, and really just gauging how you do all that, which is super important to the end result. And then in Module 3, we talk about professions within the cheese industry, whether it is cheese making, whether it's sales, whether it's judging for contests, whether it's what I do and hanging out behind a counter all day and selling great cheese to the general public. And there's so many. This, I think, was the module that really blew away a lot of my students, because they didn't really realize how many different avenues there are in the cheese industry and just how far you can take it and where you can go. And it was fascinating. If I didn't love my job as much as I do, I'd be like, ooh, there was a couple that came up and I was like, I want to do that. So that was really a really fun deep dive into that. And that module, we actually also talk about AOC and DOP. So it's not just based around cheese in the industry in the U.S. We do go over to Europe and talk about, their designations and the beautiful cheese that's made over there too. So, and then Module 4, we go into that sensory evaluation. And basically what you're doing is taking everything you've learned from Modules 1 through 3 and put it all together for Module 4. So you're doing a sensory evaluation worksheet, you're making a sell sheet as if you were a cheesemaker and wanted to market this, because that's a huge part of the cheese industry. Whether you're a monger, whether you're in the sales department, whether you're the cheesemaker, you have to market your cheese so that people will buy it, because there's so much cheese out there. You need to let people know why yours is the best and they should buy it. So we take students through that whole part of it, and then we actually have them film a presentation of themselves for that final presentation, and it takes you through everything. They talk about the tasting of their, full sensory evaluation of their cheese. They talk about where it's made, how it's made, what, if it's a seasonal cheese, what season it is, why is it there, history behind it, and then we talk about the marketing of it, how you would display it or how you would describe it to a customer for them to buy it. So it really just takes you through the entire thing in 4 quick weeks. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time.
Which is why we're doing it again. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us so much information about the course. Again, I'm really upset that I didn't eat much lunch, because this is kind of killing me right now. I want to just, Cynthia, I'm going to have you, I'm going to take your mic back on here for a second. We're going to show a quick video, it's about 5 minutes long, of the pie crust. And we thought this was perfect timing, because here comes some of the holidays. And I feel like one of the things that culinary nutrition in the course is is breaking down some of the barriers and the fears that you might have, and realizing lentils can be very approachable. Making a pie crust from home is not, you don't have to buy the frozen one in the freezer. This is actually pretty easy. So I want Cynthia, just give us a quick little intro as to what we're going to see. And then I just wanted to tell Erika and Cynthia and Mary, when we play the video, I'm going to have you turn your cameras off. It allows us to play the video full screen. And then when we come back, I'll have you turn your cameras right back on. So Cynthia, give us a little quick intro as to what we're about to see.
So this is me in the foods lab making a pie crust, self-explanatory. You'll see it.
Okay. All right. We'll see you guys in just a few minutes. We'll be back to answer all these questions in about 5 minutes after you learn how to make a pie crust.
So today I'm going to make a pie crust, just one pie crust for about a 9-inch pie. And a pie crust is one of those basic things that you should know how to make. It's extremely easy. It's the technique that usually gets to be complicated. But it is, you know, you use a pie crust for anything sweet, blueberry, apple, peach pie. You also use it for a quiche. You also can use it for a chicken pot pie. So it's a really nice thing to have in the back of your mind. Relatively few ingredients. So I have 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I have a quarter of a cup of very, very cold ice water. I have 1 cup of flour, a little bit of salt, and I have my utensils, the tools that I'm going to do to be able to cut the butter. So it's a pretty easy recipe. So the first thing that I'm going to do is put the flour into the bowl. You can see that my mise en place is completely set up and ready. And then I'm going to add the butter chunks, a little bit of salt. And I'm going to break it up. And this is a pastry cutter. If you don't have a pastry cutter, you can use 2 knives and just do that. But you're basically going to just break this butter into the flour. And the key to a good pie crust is to not get it warm. Because if you have butter chunks that are still left, they melt out. And in between the pockets where they melt, they create space, which then you get flakiness. And that is the key to a good pie crust. So you want to just keep working it. Till you can start to see that it forms like little peas. You get the idea. It should look like this. And then you're going to slowly add the water. And this is something that I find it's hard to do if you're not using your hands. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, use a spoon, but I think that in order to be able to get this to be mixed, you kind of need your hands to feel it. Okay, and you don't necessarily have to use all the water, and sometimes you need a little bit more, but it should come together not smoothly. And then once you get a sense of it, you'll have what they call a shaggy ball. And this will just be how it is until it refrigerates for a while. It should look messy. And then what you're going to do, in order for this dough to gelatinize, you're going to want it to refrigerate for a while. refrigerator for about, I mean, this can stay in the refrigerator for a good 24 hours, but a good 20 minutes to 40 minutes will get the right gelatinization, and then we'll roll it out next. Okay, so the pie crust has properly gelatinized in the refrigerator, and now it's time to roll it out. Okay, so we have a nice crust here. Put a little flour down. Put a little flour on the rolling pin. And if it starts to stick, just put a little more on here. You want to try to roll it out the edges and try not to go off the edge. Because when you go off the edge, you make the pie crust will have different edges, and so you want to make sure that it's staying an even thickness. And you can see the little butter chunks in here. That's a good sign. And you'll just keep rolling this until you get it to the right size. And you can start to pinch your edges together. It's very forgiving. Okay, and this is about ready to add to the pan.
From that video. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for showing us how to, I'm going to have everyone turn back on their cameras and come back in with us. So there's just the simple steps, and I think that Cynthia makes it look so easy, and thank you for making, maybe it's demystifies the pie crust a little bit. So I know that we have just a few more minutes, and Cynthia's coming back in with her webcam as well. I know we have a few more minutes. So I wanted to just come back to Erika real quick and just the scholarship and the gift boxes. There was a question earlier saying, if I sign up for the scholarship, would I be eligible for the gift box? Just what's that process like for people as well? Oh, Erika, we're not hearing you. Can you turn back on your microphone too? That would be helpful. Just at the top, connect that microphone, then we should get you.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Awesome. Keep going. Thank you.
Good. Great. We are going to share all of our scholarship submissions with the University of Vermont, and then they are going to do kind of a random drawing of the gift boxes. So yes, you are still eligible, even if you apply for the scholarship. So,
right.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Yes, good. Thank you. I know people were a little concerned if it was one or the other. So thank you for that. And thank you.
No, they're not correlated in that way.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. And please share our gratitude back to the team as well for making this opportunity. Cynthia, I wanted to ask, and just make sure, Cynthia, that you've turned back on your microphone too at the top. And so I wanted to ask you, we had a question from Jess, are there any live synchronistic, which we are live sessions, are there any live sessions in the culinary nutrition course?
Yes, there are. However, if you can't make it, we we tape them so they're archived. So if you can't be there, but we do 2 live sessions.
Great. Thank you so much. And I have the slide up here as well about culinary nutrition. The course is starting in the beginning of the new year, and the cost. And Cabot is offering some very generous scholarships as well. And an additional piece of just factoring in with thinking about culinary nutrition is the cost of the groceries, the ingredients to make the recipes. And the required text is the wonderful book by Alice Waters, The Art of Simple Food. And I know, Cynthia, you're looking forward to this one as well. And Mary, I'm going to come back to you for just a moment too, in terms of your course is starting again in the new year. What are you looking forward to teaching this for a second time?
My favorite thing with the first run of the course was learning about cheeses I had actually never had before, because students get to pick which cheeses they want to focus on for their final presentation, and there were a few that I've never even tried before, so that was really fun because I get to learn too.
I bet, and taste so many amazing cheeses. Cynthia, it looks like a question here from Sabina for your course. Can wax or parchment paper be used as a substitute for plastic wrap for the pie crust?
Absolutely. Oh, for sure.
And then also just thinking too, from Tammy, she asked, do any of the studies using sensory experience of food, food as therapy, touch on patients with TBI?
So that's brain injury. Is that what that is? I think it's what it is. I don't know. I mean, I would have to look. I know that they're doing food therapy with Alzheimer patients, but I actually don't know about that, and I could find out for you.
Okay. And if you do have additional questions from our viewers today, you can email us at learn@uvm.edu, and we can make sure to share that information. There was a great question earlier, Cynthia, from Anna. I'm a high school biology teacher who also teaches sustainable food system and gardening culinary science classes. Do other teachers take this course? What type of people take this class? And this would be a great opportunity
I know.
to share about John Dewey Kitchen as well. So answer the question about culinary, but please tell us about John Dewey Kitchen, which is coming up next summer too.
So I've only taught the course once, and the course was mainly people who are advising people. So they had a background in nutrition. I think teachers would be fine in the class now that I've been through it once. But the John Dewey Kitchen Institute takes a lot of these same concepts. I don't know if you realize that John Dewey, the preeminent scholar and philosopher, who actually is from Vermont a long time ago, had a curricular obsession with the kitchen. And because he believed that it created thriving democracies, which was his lifelong goal and something that we could all better understand today, the need for. And so this course focuses on teachers, and I've had all kinds of teachers. In my last class, I had a science teacher, I had a preschool teacher, I had a college professor. And we look at curriculum and we think about incorporating food as a vehicle for learning, not necessarily about cooking. You develop cooking skills as you go through, but it's really a byproduct of the experience of the inquiry process of using food to explore, to experiment, and the rigor associated with that. So that course would also be good.
And that is planned again for next summer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we'll definitely keep an eye on information on that as it comes available on our website. And Kelly asks, can the course be vegan or vegetarian adaptable?
Yes, for sure. And that is actually what I learned about having people be at home cooking, because they can buy the ingredients according to what they want, not what we're buying. So we had a lot of people who switched things out. They had taste preferences, and we helped them with that. So yeah, by all means. And also in the beginning, we use a couple of recipes that we want you to use out of the book. But after that, we're using a website where you're choosing your own recipes, and then it becomes much more adaptable to your own palate.
Great. And I know those recipe adaptations is a really important piece of the course as well. So we are at time. I wanted to say again, thank you to Erika and the Cabot Creamery family for providing this opportunity for us. Mary, thank you so much for taking us through a cheese tasting and sensory experience today, and sharing information about the next offering of Artisan cheese. And Cynthia, thank you so much for walking us through the ins and outs of culinary nutrition and the teaser for John Dewey Kitchen, which is coming up this summer. I wish you all a wonderful afternoon. If there's more information you need to learn, please join us on our website at learn.uvm.edu. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Pleasure.